Should be fine. Yo, what's going on? No, nothing. I can talk. I'm just doing like an update video thing. Yeah, I saw that. Oh, that's pretty good. Right. Gotcha. Actually, you know what? Let me go take a look at that. I'll give you a call back in a little while, alright? Yeah. Cool. Later on. A little while after I finish my video. Welcome back to Between the Frames. It's a brand new episode. It's a brand new month. We've just entered into the month of June as I record this. My name is Captain McKay. Thank you for joining me as always. Here's a list of some lovely Patreon backers that have gotten to see some of this a little bit early. In fact, they've gotten to watch all of this early if they choose to. So this episode, I want to lead with this right off the bat. This is actually an episode that I've been recording alongside a separate Between the Frames episode. Now that one that will be, I don't know, sometime in the near future, is a behind-the-scenes look at the most recent Warzone episode, the last JWF wrestling animation that went up a few weeks ago now, maybe about a month. So that one is going to be a little bit more specifically pertaining to that. So if you're interested in kind of the how-to and the behind-the-scenes of that, by all means, check it out when it's out. Am I in focus? Am I messing up? I think we're good. As for what's going on here today, well, it's a couple different things. I built a new diorama that some of you may have seen. First of all, if you're on the Patreon, you saw it. But also, if you watched the 89 Batman Mezco figure review I did, it's in there. But we're going to take a little closer look at it today. I think it deserves it. It's a really cool piece, and I'm very happy with how it came out, so hopefully you agree. Also want to get into a bunch of figures I got. Now, there's a lot. That pile of loot's been beating the hell out of me lately, so I definitely wanted to at least put some of this stuff into a video, because trust me, it's a lot. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get right into it. Shifting some things around. Taking down the XMen display that I have, the mansion. And yeah, it looks pretty bare with none of the figures on it, obviously. This thing was starting to get a little bit, I don't know, a little bit too many characters, and I wasn't able to really like keep filling it in and have it, you know, be able to support the amount of figures that there were. So taking it apart, I'm going to probably have to do a repaint on this because this has been set up for so long that some of the figures, you can see that where they were standing, they like actually got kind of stuck there, and when you pulled them up, the paint from the diorama like came up with the bottom of the feet. It peels right off the bottom of the figure's feet, but you know, leaves the diorama looking a little messed up. That's where Strong Guy was standing, and he's the biggest figure I had in here, so he took the most paint with him. But yeah, like, I mean, these are just kind of like props from like a Melissa and Doug dollhouse set that I got on Amazon, and these kind of ridiculous looking ugly striped couches and some other stuff. But I do like this display. Might just be time for a revisit, or at least a cleanup. So, part of the reason why I've slowed down a little bit on shooting like between the frames stuff is because I was actually like cleaning a lot, not just in here, but all over the apartment. You can see I haven't had this much floor space in here since probably I moved into the apartment. But the reason for that is because there was a city inspector that had to come through and just like take a look at the apartment with the landlord and, you know, make sure everything was above board and, you know, I guess up to code and whatever the case. So that all happened today and everything was fine. I mean, the apartment, I like this apartment and everything's good, so, you know, no worries there. But that's also, you know, been part of the reason why I've been focusing on trying to like tidy the place up a little bit. But now that that's out of the way, let's take a look at this diorama. Join me as we head out front. A little balcony area here at the landing. So I got the diorama here. I did mention a while back that, you know, I want it to be gritty. I want it to be grimy. So I got a paint wash right there. It's basically just black and green mixed with a bunch of water. And I'm going to paint over this, and then I got a handful of paper towels to just like dry it off, and then let that wash just get in all the cracks and everything right there. That'll really make it look nice and grimy, which is what I want from this diorama. All right, let's slop them up. A little before and after. That's the original piece, and this is with the wash on it. You can see it kind of brings out some of the real filth. It's a nasty looking diorama. I love it. So this diorama, I wanted it to represent like a very late 80s, very early 90s looking, you know, just rundown alleyway, building front, whatever this is, street scene kind of thing. The reason I made this is because I wanted something to show when I got the '89 Mezco Batman. I wanted a different looking backdrop than the one I usually use. That way, when I recorded that review, there would be a contrast between the Superman and the Batman. See, Superman was in front of the gray buildings that I've used before, and Batman was in front of this one, which was, you know, just like a little bit more rundown, a little more Gotham City looking, in my opinion. So if you've been on the Patreon at all, you would have seen like kind of work in progress development of this diorama, and you already know about the gimmicks, so, you know, don't spoil anything for anybody. But yeah, I like the way this turned out. I just wanted it to be, you know, just really versatile, but I also wanted to set it firmly in like that 1989 era time frame. And obviously, like, it's not going to be exactly 1989. I got some things that are a little before, and probably one or two things that came a little after. But, you know, bunch of music and movie stuff, cigarette ads, beer ads, and like just all the kind of stuff that, you know, just makes me think of that time period. And you know, I like the way that it all came together. There's just a certain like depravity of going back and seeing, you know, like cigarette ads from like back in the day. Like, look how happy this lady is. She's just like, yeah, just give me as many cigarettes. I want them all. Yeah, man, it was crazy, the stuff that was like marketed to people back then, the way it is. Although then again, now stuff is being marketed and shoved down people's throats, and it's different, but it's probably just as deadly. This fire escape I approached totally differently than any other fire escape I've ever made. So this ladder piece here, let me move the light. This is, it's actually just two ladder pieces that are like kind of stuck together and stuck into the wall with toothpicks. It doesn't actually like fold down and like extend down or anything. It's really just for show. And then that one is the same thing. It's just you know, flat strips of wood, and I put toothpicks in the middle of it. What I did, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I actually like dremeled out small tiny little holes and ran the toothpicks through, so that way, you know, when I glued them, it would have a little bit more structural integrity to it. And then obviously the toothpicks, you can see like holding it into the wall, which I may actually switch out because they break a little easy. So I want to try and like get smaller dowels or something in there. We'll see. But yeah, the windows and everything, those are trading card top loaders with some trim that I just painted up. And this one here is actually like a piece of like action figure plastic with, I think, tracing paper behind. Oh no, actually that's not tracing paper. That's I just painted the back side of that plastic with like a thin white coat. And then the actual like window itself is made out of like one of those plastic mesh, you know, make it yourself baskets that you can get from like Dollar Tree or whatever it was. I don't remember specifically. I know Al Figures actually sent me this one a long time ago, and I've just finally gotten around to using some more of it. But I like that as like kind of an industrial like warehouse looking window. I think that looks really good. So the fire escape itself is it's all like wood. You know, it's various little strips that I either cut to different sizes or like toothpicks for like the you know, parts of the guardrail like that, and then it's all kind of like glued down, painted. It was painted a flat black and then dry brushed with like gold and silver to kind of give it like that rusty look. But yeah, this is all wood. It's fairly stable. These dowels just stick into the holes in the wall there, and it can support an action figure. So if you remember my Batman '89 Mezco like review, I had that figure standing on here, and it supported his weight just, you know, pretty well. And that is on the heavier side as far as figures go. So like if you have like normal action figures, they'll stand on here no problem. Staircase, separate piece, it's glued together, and that just kind of slides right in there. And you got yourself up to the door. The door is actually kind of cool. It's just there's some more of that like knitting mesh that I painted to look like metal, like grating. The doorknob is literally just a push pin. I just pushed it in there. There's a small strip of foam there to, you know, just kind of give it a little bit more, as well as down there for like just a, you know, guard or whatever. And around the window. On either side of the door, I got like the call box there. I got, you know, the meter and the mailbox. Just small little things that kind of bring this whole thing to life. Piping running up the building on this side and into the wall there, as well as over here. And I've got like, you know, water, like faucet type thing down there too. Big Schlitz billboard, you know how it is. And, you know, another door on this side for, you know, just whatever this entryway happens to be. So you notice there's a light right here. This actually is functional, as well as the lights up above the billboard. I have a switch up here that, there you go. So the lighting does work, which is pretty cool. You could also backlight those two windows and that one up there, so you could get even more illumination out of this if you wanted to, if you set up your, you know, camera angles or whatever. It works really nicely. Oh, but what's that you're asking? What other gimmicks does this set have? Well, if you're on Patreon, you already know it, but if you're not, let me show you. So I'm gonna take this ladder piece off because this ends up being something that we don't actually need for the gimmick. But first, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this bad boy off. This little end piece right here, you can see it's got its own magnets built in. It's got a few different magnets in there. Wonder why that is. So this side wall here, actually, you just pop this right off. I'm trying to do it with one hand, it's not gonna work. And then, when it's off, you just pop it right on over to this side. Doing this with one hand, also a terrible idea. And now we've got ourselves like a long sectional like backdrop type thing. And what's cool about this is you can actually just push this pipe back over a little bit. And then that piece we took off, remember this? Well, guess what? You can pop it right back on over here. And it looks a lot more flush, a lot more clean. And yeah, so that edge piece there sticks to the side of the wall when it's facing this way, but also sticks to that side of the wall when it's, you know, kind of just lined up like that. I like to add a few little props and stuff too. You can put like, you know, your garbage dumpster, or, you know, if you have garbage cans to put over here by the stairs or whatever the case, like you can do pretty much whatever you want. But yeah, I was very happy with the way this came out. And since we're talking about new figures, the chosen one, Liu Kang baby, Storm Collectibles. It is no exaggeration to say that this might be the best Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat figure they've done. This is a really, really good figure. They've improved on a lot of the kind of the weirder proportions that some of the Storm figures have had. So like, there's some that have had like, you know, little bulkier arms and legs. There's some that have had kind of like strange, like, you know, shoulders that were out a little too far, or like hips that were out a little bit too weird, or whatever the case. But like, you know, for the most part, when those figures, like when you pose them up, they look a lot better, but when you just have them kind of standing, they look a little awkward. But Liu Kang looks great just stood here like this, and then when you pose him, he looks great doing that too. Yeah, like, come on, this is so good. I don't even know how you would explain what he's got going on here. These are the martial arts, like kind of at the ready hands, where he's like in his pose, like, I don't know, maybe his fight stance. He's got his blue steel, or is that Le Tigre? I don't know. But yeah, man, this is so good. Poses really nicely, and you know, he comes with all the hands and stuff that you would ever want from a Storm Collectibles figure. The screaming head on there for all of his various sound effects that he always makes when he's fighting. He's got the open hands for doing like his, you know, his victory pose, the little bow, or for shooting a fireball. Now, if only he had a fireball. Oh, but he does have one. Look at this. This is a nice little detail. It's even got the little dragon fang things in the front of it like it does in the video games. Jeez, he's pretty complete. Next you're going to tell me he comes with his dragon animality. See, now things are just getting silly. He comes with a full-size, fully posable dragon from his Mortal Kombat 2 fatality, which I guess would later be his animality technically in Mortal Kombat 3. Man, what a time to be alive. Now, the dragon's not like the most posable thing in the world, but I don't think it was ever meant to be. I think it was just kind of meant to be like a showpiece originally, but it was more articulated than I expected when I actually like took it out of the box and started messing with it. Like, he's got joints like throughout the length of the body. He's got a couple to kind of give him a little bit of range. Inside the head and neck, there's a few, like in the jaw, you know, shoulder, elbow, wrist, few in the leg. He's even got like little toe hinges if you want, so that's pretty cool. He comes apart too, like the tail I think was a separate piece when he came out of the box, and I believe maybe the upper body was as well, not sure. But yeah, like, come on, this is great. There you go, for the Shaolin You know what's funny is now seeing Kung Lao and Raiden, like, along with this Liu Kang, I'm like, yeah, they could do better versions of Kung Lao and Raiden. Like, the proportions, the skin color, like, some of the different things that I didn't necessarily notice until I had Liu Kang. I was like, yeah, they could have probably, you know, streamlined that a little bit. But you know what? If they do different versions, that's fine. Maybe they do an MK3 version of Kung Lao and tighten it up a little bit, and an MK1 version of Raiden, same thing. Don't get me wrong, I still really like both figures, but this Liu Kang is, I can't stop saying enough good things about it. This is probably the best Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat figure to date. There's actually two versions. There's a Big Bad Toy Store exclusive, which I think is limited to like 500 pieces or some very, very limited number. But it's not different enough from this one to make me pull the trigger. The dragon is like completely translucent orange, like fire. And he does have awesome like fire effects. But the Liu Kang figure itself, I believe the only difference is he has like a dark burnt orange instead of a red on his clothing. I mean, you know how they would have had me is if they basically just made him like all black pants with like white shoes, like MK1 style. They would have had me. I would have double dipped and got him. But thankfully they saved me about $180 by just you know, not making it different enough from this version. But yeah, overall, Liu Kang, great. High marks. Big recommendation if you are interested in this figure. I can't say enough good things about it. Ready to go look at some more figures? I know I am. That's probably going to be the highlight of the rest of this episode, or the entire rest of this episode. Recently got the Mayfax Cyclops. This is the newer version that got released. This isn't the Jim Lee 90s version that everybody thinks of with Cyclops that Mayfax did before. This is the version that he wore in his X Factor run, I believe. But I've always liked this costume. It reminds me of the old Toy Biz figure, and my rule for Mayfax figures as far as X-Men goes is I'm only getting the ones that look like the Toy Biz 90s Series 1 figures, which to date includes this Cyclops, Brown Suit Wolverine, and Magneto, who is about to release, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is a really cool figure. I actually really like the simplicity. The blue and the white looks great. It's classic. I'm a big fan. Obviously the Mayfax, you get the different hands and different head sculpts and everything. Here's the unmasked head where he just has like his ruby quartz like sunglasses on. And he also has like this little neck collar piece for like simulating like his mask being pulled down and, you know, just not up around his face. The one thing I wish this figure included was like the full like headgear, because when I think of Cyclops in this costume, he always has like the full like skull cap thing going on, and this just doesn't have it for some reason, which is kind of disappointing, honestly. I think that would make me like really enjoy the figure that much more. But like I said, as it is, it's not bad. There's another head sculpt where he's got the mask off, but he still has the visor on. So you basically get mask up, visor on, you get mask down, visor on, and then you get mask down sunglasses. And all the visors are interchangeable too. So this one with like the lens flare effect coming out the side, you can swap this out with just a standard one, or you can swap it out with the one with like the hole in it to put in the blast effects. Yeah, I like this. One of the blast effects is kind of like fanned out, so you get like a super wide spread, and then the other one is a little thinner. Yeah, not bad at all. I like it. Like I said, really cool, but really wish he had like the head covering instead of just having his hair out like this, because that's what I think of when I think of this costume, is like the full skull cap. Yeah. These two look awesome together though. Can't wait for Magneto. Anyway, since we talked about the Mayfax Cyclops, I also wanted to give a shout out to these 90s Jim Lee costume, Uncanny XMen number 275. This whole team came together really quickly. This Wolverine came out in that retro carded wave that I think was the very end of last year. I think I got mine at the beginning of this year. The rest of these characters all came out in 3-packs pretty recently. I got mine just this past week as I record this. And there's something about the uniformity that really stands out about these figures. Like, they all have very similar uniforms, obviously, but they're all painted really nicely. The head sculpts on these are all much nicer than, like, perhaps some previous versions of these characters that got released. I know they've had Paul Harding doing a lot of the head sculpts on a lot of these figures, and that degree of talent definitely brings out something in these figures, which is great. A lot of these characters all have like the additional like articulation, like the male bodies have like the butterfly joints and everything. Storm and Psylocke have like double jointed arms, which is unusual for female legends, or at least was up until pretty recently. Jubilee unfortunately still has the single joints, but she's on a much smaller body. So this effect that's on Jubilee is actually not hers. That's from the Dazzler figure that came out way back in like the Warlock wave, the one from like the, well actually I got it right here. This one here with like the rollerblades and all that kind of stuff. I just thought that looked more like Jubilee's powers. She also has these things, which I believe came with the Jubilee Build-A-Figure. I'm not 100% sure on that, but similar effects definitely did. But I think these are better, just for her. You may also notice that Forge isn't holding the gun that he came with. That was this gun right here, which admittedly is painted much nicer than the one he has in his hands, and there's a lot more detail on it, but this is very similar to the gun that he actually has on that comic book cover. Now that gun came with this cable figure, as I hold them upside down in the background. This is the one from the Juggernaut wave, I want to say, way back in the day. I think it was Robo that pointed out that this gun actually already exists in Marvel Legends, so and you know, just for the sake of accuracy, I think it looks cool. And since we're talking about Forge, might as well pull the old one out and see some of the differences. The first thing you're going to notice, obviously, is the colors are a little different. The blue and the yellow in particular is much brighter on the new one compared to the old one, where it's like a more like darker yellow. The old one also has like more brown accents, like he's got the pistol holstered to his leg, as well as the brown boots with like the tassels. So you do get two very different looks out of Forge. I believe the head sculpt is the same, but the newer one has that like paint print technology, whatever it is, which I do like, but it also kind of makes him look like Liam Neeson. I think maybe it's the skin color that makes him look like Liam Neeson, because the original one you can see is a little bit darker in skin tone, which I think is probably more accurate for Forge, but either way, like both of these are good. I do like that this one just blends in seamlessly with that team that I just had lined up here though, whereas this one you could use as like an X Factor character, or like put him in the background like working on some machinery or whatever. And Forge definitely did wear these style boots and stuff in the comics at different times, so there is room in your collection for both of these. So if you do have this old one, this new one is still gonna have a nice place in your collection. Plus he is a better figure overall. He doesn't have like the pins and stuff in the joints, and he does have the butterfly joints and you know, some different things going for him. But yeah, just a couple of differences between the two. And a little something different for Gambit. This is actually the coat that came with the Toy Biz Gambit Marvel Legends figure from like 2003 or 2004, whenever that came out. So this coat has seen a lot of years in my collection, but it's still holding up. I had it on my Hasbro Caliban Wave Gambit, because I did a swap out on the arms and I put this on it because I just preferred the cloth. And since then, I've actually ordered a cloth goods coat on eBay that hasn't arrived yet, so I can't really show it to you. It's similar to the one, it might even be identical to the one that I got for the Mezco Joker that I showed back in that Batman Mezco review. It's just, you know, a browner color instead of like the gray that one was. But I'm thinking that'll look good on Gambit. These cards are from like a DC UC Joker figure, I think, and this staff, I'm not sure what this staff is. This is, I don't know if this is like Deathstroke or something. I like the look of it because it's like segmented, so it looks like it's like extendable and collapsible like Gambit's is. And it's a little longer. This is the one that he comes with stock, which is not bad, but I don't know. I just like having options. Gambit was drawn with and without the coat at this point, so, you know, I'm glad he looks good either way. And for comparison's sake, this is the Caliban Wave Gambit with the Toy Biz Figures coat, and this is the Retro Card Gambit that came out a couple years after that one with much better head sculpt in my opinion. They swapped out the black color scheme for like a really deep dark blue, which I'm fine with. Gambit, you know, depending on the artist, like they just took certain liberties with the costumes. But they both look good in my opinion. I was never crazy about the head sculpt on this one, but this one they definitely improved, and this one I think is the best of the bunch. I don't know how much swapping you could really do, because like this head sculpt is much larger than the other ones, just down to this being a little bit more muscular figure than these two. But yeah, I'm glad I got them all in my collection, and like I said, I'm curious about when that custom coat shows up, how that's going to look. I'm pretty sure I'm going to put it on this new one, but depending on like the color and how I think it looks, I might end up putting it on the older figure and then using that Toy Biz coat and putting it on him, because I already know that looks pretty good. So we'll see. And since we got the old Psylocke out, might as well just compare to the new one. I think it's night and day as far as the heads go. The paint and the detail work on the newer one is obviously much better. The articulation on this new one is miles ahead of the other one, just down to like the double jointed elbows and just some of the better engineering they've been using lately. I think the body type suits Psylocke more than the original one. I never had as much of a problem with this figure as I know like a lot of other people did, but I could definitely see room for improvement, especially now that they've added like the pinless joints and everything to like the legs and whatever. Plus it always annoyed me that this one had like the, you could see on her back of her leg there that she has like the stamp with like the item number or serial number, whatever that is. What are you doing, guys? I will say the one good thing though is I like the colors on like the psychic knife effects and the sword. I think maybe a little more than the newer version. Like this is, more translucent, will probably catch light better, but I don't know. I just think that looks cool how bright it is. And while it's not perfect, you can use the effect piece from the earlier Psylocke on the new one. You just kind of have to like fudge it in there with the hair, kind of stabilizing it. It doesn't look bad. I like it. I guess might as well take a look at Jubilee since we're going through some of these. This is, I think, once again, probably the best one we've gotten. This is the, I think, Caliban Wave one. And this is the Build-A-Figure from like a long time ago. And they've consistently improved with Jubilee. Like this was first, then this one, and then the new one. And there was another version of her that was like retro card, or I'm sorry, not retro carded. It was in the VHS set with like some different paint deco and stuff. It looked good, but I didn't really need it because it was a little too similar for this, and I didn't care for like the cell shading. But yeah, these two actually have the same head sculpts. They're just painted differently. So this one does have the bubblegum chewing head that I had on it before when I had them all set up, and this one has like a just more neutral kind of different head sculpt with nothing going on really with it. I would love to see the Generation X version of Jubilee, since I know they just released Monet, and you know, she was a part of that team. So I don't know if they would like use this body and like this coat, or if they would, you know, do something where they just didn't bother with the coat. I'm not 100% sure how they would do that, but either way, I'd be curious to see it. The funny thing is, I remember this Jubilee being in the comics while this was like, you know, her established kind of like canon costume. She did wear this still occasionally in field missions in the costume, and I remember Wolverine number 50 where she's on the Blackbird. She talks about Mario 3 and she's wearing this, when I always thought it was kind of cool that like she was still in the throwback costume when all the rest of the X-Men were in their more kind of traditional Jim Lee costumes of the time. So yeah, just a little cool throwback. Incidentally, that same issue of Wolverine is also where they explained why he went from his brown costume back to the tiger stripe one. So a little bit of trivia there.
So this showed up today. Did not know this was actually coming today. I mean, I ordered it a little while ago and I didn't get an email that it was shipping or any of it. Got it from GameStop. I guess they don't believe in emailing people, so hey, that's all right.
Here's the Batmobile out of the box. You will certainly recognize this as the 1989 Batman that carried over into Batman Returns. And this is apparently also in the new Flash movie, which is what this is based on. So I've had some time to like mess with this a little bit. I do like it. You got a little button here that pops the canopy open, or if it works. There we go. And then you can slide the canopy forward like it does in the movie, or you can just do it like old school Kenner style and just pull the lid up like that. But I dig it. What I don't dig is why is the canopy a different color than the rest of the car? Like this is gray and then the rest is black. But my plan was always to kind of like put a coat of paint on this anyway. It's a little too reflective, a little too shiny. I don't remember it being that in the movies. I don't know, maybe it looks like this in the Flash movie. I have no idea. But I would like to put like a matte coat on it and, you know, match the canopy to the rest of the car and see what happens. I've seen people get crazy and like totally customize the canopy to be a little more screen accurate. I don't know if I'm gonna go that far, but hey, you know. For those wondering, yes, it does scale pretty nicely with the Mezco 89 Michael Keaton. So I know that's the reason why I bought it, and probably the reason why a lot of other people bought it too. And happy to report that this does work nicely. And happy to report that Mezco Batman does in fact also fit inside the car, so if you want to have him driving around the streets of Gotham, you can. So overall, while the scale of the car may be a little bit large since it's meant for McFarlane figures and those are like a 7-inch scale compared to a 6-inch, I don't mind that it's bigger because I always have memories of like the Kenner Batman Returns Batmobile, and that was always like much larger than I think scale-wise it should have been. But you know, that doesn't bother me. Just like this doesn't bother me. I do think these look good together, and I particularly think that once this car gets a little overhaul, you know, it's gonna look nice. And now we're here, full circle. I dug out my Kenner Batman Returns Batmobile and just did a little compare and contrast. So what's funny is I remember the Kenner Batmobile being like more shiny and glossy, kind of like this, but it's actually not. I don't know if that's just because it's 30-something years old and it just kind of lost a little bit that luster. I couldn't tell you, but it's, I mean, it's obviously still got some reflective like gloss on it, but it's not to the effect that the McFarlane one has. Interestingly enough, the Kenner one actually has some details that the McFarlane one doesn't. It has the, you can see right there by the back fin, has like the gas caps on either side, which the McFarlane one, for some reason, does not have that detail. If you spin it around though and look at the back, you'll notice though that the McFarlane one does have like the exhaust vents here, and the Kenner one does not. Now there was a version of the Kenner one that came out for the original Dark Knight collection that had those, because when you pressed them, the flame shot out the back. But this is the second version of the Batmobile they made, and for some reason they did not include that detail. So you know what? Yeah, this I'm glad to have this in my collection, and it's cool to hopefully not let it roll off the table. There we go. But it's cool to compare it to the old school. I mean, I always love seeing updated stuff from like old toys that I used to love as a kid. And now I love the bigger version as an adult. But like I said, I'm going to work with it a little bit. However, as far as fun goes, this one has the shooting missile launchers and, you know, boom, Bat Missile. That's right, this is the Batman Returns one where he blows the sides off and goes down the narrow alley. So, you know, 10 points to Kenner for fun. Here's the Bratz car, and you can see that the Batmobile, you know, if we're going like bumper to bumper here, Batmobile edges it out by a little bit, so it's considerable size vehicle for your 1/12 or 1/10 or whatever collection. So here is the Mattel 66 Batmobile that I haven't taken out of the box in forever. I got this on an Amazon deal back in the day when Mattel had the license for the 60s Batman stuff before McFarlane got it. And they've done their own version of this car too, but it's small because their figure scaling is smaller for that line. And I don't think it's as detailed, and I just don't think it's as good. But these two, honestly, these look really, really nice together. Like, they scale pretty well. I've always kind of pictured the 89 Batmobile being a larger car than the 60s one, and that does work out pretty well, in my opinion. Even if they're meant to be about the same size, like, it's, I mean, still definitely this one is longer and a little bit bulkier and bigger because of the scaling, but honestly, like, you could very easily make these two look like they belong seamlessly in like a display or a diorama or something together. You can see a lot of the detail that Mattel put into it with like the various gadgets and switches and components inside the cockpit, and it looks really, really nice. So yeah, I think if I eventually ever touch this car up, I might try and do something with these, like as far as a diorama or something goes, because I think a nice Batcave would be cool. And lastly, we got to take a look at some monsters. This is the Hiya Toys Kong from Godzilla vs. Kong, the movie from 2021, a couple years ago. There was an SH MonsterArts of this figure that I showed and I think made my top figures of that year, but this one looks way more like the movie. I mean, just his head sculpts in general like are much, much more screen accurate. He doesn't pose as much as the MonsterArts does, but he does get enough articulation to, you know, get him into some pretty decent looking poses. Yeah, man, the angry head sculpt looks great. The amount of screen accurate detail they got into these Hiya figures is really, really nice. I think they had the advantage with making these figures because the movie had already been out by the time these started production, whereas MonsterArts typically was working with like unfinished model renders and stuff, and just basically like they were making the figures at the same time the movie was being made. So if they changed something in the movie, the figure might not necessarily reflect what we finally saw in the movie. That happened with King Ghidorah too, famously. Like that's why the SH MonsterArts Ghidorah doesn't look quite screen accurate. Then you got this head with a nice little snarl on it. What I also like is the paint they used. It's like they dry brushed on his fur, so a lot of that fur detail comes out, but then when you actually look at his chest where there's less fur, they were able to make it look more like just skin, and they in fact did a really good job of painting like the scars and stuff across his chest too. So yeah, major improvement on the SH MonsterArts for me in terms of like how he looks. But like I said, a little downgrade in articulation and posability, but I mean, if you're just looking to stick this on a shelf, I would recommend the Hiya over the MonsterArts. And we gotta talk about Shin Godzilla. That's right, this is the nighttime like battle version. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but I got this just this past week, and I really like this. I never got my own version of Shin Godzilla. Mountain Man got the original release when it first came out, and then there have been a couple different versions since then. This is SH MonsterArts. They've done like the Atomic Breath version. They've done like the Frozen version where his tail is kind of splintered off into like the smaller Godzillas that are like forming out of it and stuff. So this version is as close to the original one as they've done in a while, and it's also unique enough to, I think, warrant buying if you already have the original one and you just want something a little different. It's molded in like a translucent red plastic with paint on it, so I think that'll really catch light really nicely if you're doing some different like photography or, you know, whatever it is you're doing. I've noticed where some people said they were having some issues with like the paint around the eyes and the teeth, and my eyes, in my opinion, look good. However, I will say that he looks like he has an extra row of teeth on this side of his bottom of his jaw. Like you can see the ones in his mouth, and it looks like they're growing like on the side of his mouth as well, which would be upsetting if I was a stickler for screen accuracy. But Shin Godzilla, if you've ever seen that movie, he's a weird freaking monster, man. So like that actually is kind of, I don't want to say it's like in character with the monster, but it's very much something that could have potentially happened in the movie, and it would not be out of place at all. The other side appears to only have like the one row of teeth at the bottom, so like that's not something that affects both sides of my figure's mouth. But yeah, you can see the paint on the eyes. It's very like tiny, beady little eyes, but it does look good. And the paint everywhere else on the figure seems to be pretty nicely done. I've got no issues with mine. I've articulated it all, you know, very carefully, because you don't want like this tiny little arm and shoulder especially. You kind of want to be careful with it, but yeah, I've had no problems with mine at all. So here's the original release. This one, like I said, belongs to MountMen, and here's the new one. And right off the bat, you're gonna be able to tell that this is sculpted in a completely like opaque plastic with some paint applications to make it look either like, you know, glowing red underneath or whatever the case, especially like up along the back of the tail and everything. Whereas this one is just sculpted in that translucent plastic to begin with, and then the paint is kind of to highlight that a little bit and just show the different levels of like glowing that he has underneath his skin. Yeah, I don't know, I really like both of these, and I don't know that I can really pick a favorite, honestly. I'm glad I got my own version, just, you know, because I've always admired this one from afar. Well, not even from afar, from just my apartment, I've admired it. Some noticeable differences, obviously, if I'm gonna sharpen the focus up on the tails a little bit, you're gonna see that the original version has like the tail painted with like, you know, the flesh color and like a lot of the dry brushing and, you know, washes that go into it. Whereas this version has kind of just the translucent plastic that's meant to catch light better. See, this is painted like solid, so it won't catch light, whereas this one will. So it's kind of just pick which one you like better, honestly. Like I said, I don't really have a preference. I'm just happy to have Shin Godzilla. This is really nice, and you know, I've had the chance to get the original one or a reissue over the years. Never pulled the trigger. I've had the chance to get the NECA one over the years, but I really just never liked what NECA did with Shin Godzilla, so I just always passed on that one. So when I saw this one, I was like, you know what? Yeah, we're doing it. All things move toward their end, and on that you can be sure. And that, of course, includes things like this video. Want to thank you again for watching. I realized when I was making the like all those figure like reviews, not necessarily reviews, but while we were looking over all the figures that I got in the past couple of months, I realized I didn't talk at all about any of the Mythic Legion stuff I got. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. I could do a video on that kind of stuff, because they are great figures, but for some reason I just never think about talking about them when I'm doing like other stuff up here on the table. Speaking of on the table, I got to get back into some stop motion. I've been doing a little bit here and there prior to, you know, the city inspector coming through the apartment and all that. So now that that's come and gone, I can get back into animating and get back into just making a mess. So, you know, that's what I like. I like just not being able to have any kind of organization at all. So yeah, let me know if you'd watch something on Mythic Legions, and I could do a video like that. That'd be cool, I think. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. Me and MountMen, between the two of us for the last year and a half or so, have just been getting various figures, and I really enjoy a lot of them, but I just don't talk about them on the channel much. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to hit thumbs up, and I think there's a bell somewhere, I guess that helps me somehow. I've never really understood how, but you know, just if you feel like it, it's fun. Do it a click. Thank you again for checking out this episode of Between the Frames. We'll catch you in the next one. Later on.